Ugh, back again, are you? Yes? Hello? I've heard all about your investigations. I read the report just now. You found him, eh? Vigil. Yes, luckily. Well, anywho, laddie doesn't work here anymore, so your case is not to do with Barclay. I would like you to get the wrong idea about that. Of course, yes. Mr. Vigil stopped working here 10 years ago now, so... Yes, we've seen his dismissal notice, haven't we? He was given the chop. Please don't. Aye, Kimmy, you can very well. So, how about a wee handcuff biscuit? Oh, they really are like little handcuffs. And as hard as irons, too. So, what's brought you down here this day? Well, there's something else we'd like to ask you about, actually. Is that so? We believe there might have been a document that disappeared from Genshin Asugi's cell. I think it's been called the Asugi Papers or something. Did I now say Genshin's death had not to do with things that might have happened at Barclay? Leave the past in the past, laddie. Let's not further about with irrelevant details. His expression changed completely. We're clearly onto something here. Guess what? More conversations! More conversing! That murderous botched execution and the whole miserable escape. They were Barclay's darkest hour, eh? A shocking embarrassment. Because the convent had a collaborator on the prison staff, you mean? Aye. A shame. The coroners who confirmed the death of the man after his execution, Courtney Scythe. And my chief ward at the time, Vigil, who was in charge of the whole affair. But Mr. Vigil says he didn't know anything about it. That rascal would say otherwise, eh? More handcuffs? Oh, how can I say no? You can never have too much iron in your diet. When Mr. Vigil was handed his dismissal notice as a result of what happened, he was so despairing he jumped out of your office window, didn't he? I didn't like to say, but that's just what Vigil trying to get out of it. Do you think he would have jumped out from the shock of his crimes being exposed, eh? I do. You wouldn't say otherwise, though, would you? Of course, I can't shun all responsibility myself. I shouldn't have let him deceive me. Actually, there's barely anybody who can win all at the time now. With Gregson being murdered and Dr. Scythe forbidden from having any visitors. No visitors? Somebody obviously doesn't want her giving anything away. Well, we're not going home empty-handed. And I wouldn't dream of sending you back in now with it, Kimmy. Here, take a handcuff or two. Oh, well, it would be rude to say no. Wouldn't want to become anemic. I suppose if there's anybody who might still care a bit what happened back then, it'd be that last from the forensic division, Maria Gory. Maria Gory? Hi, Scythe's daughter. She didn't have no more, just the one. But the wee Baron's following in Mam's footsteps. You didn't ever see her without a scalpel in her hand. Ah! Mama? What is this? Where did she spring from? And did she just call the doctor Mama? Dr. Scythe's daughter, Maria Gory. We could do with talking to her. Why is she called Gory? It's just so weird. So, she's Dr. Scythe's daughter, but her surname is Gory? Aye, there's some family history, I'm sure, but I didn't care in the ins and outs of it. She grew up watching a man working with the bodies of folk who died in strange circumstances, and decided that to do the same with her own life. Can't understand it myself. Perhaps she was driven by a deep respect for her mother. Perhaps. Anywho, she was in charge of Gregson's autopsy, I believe. Right, and the coroner responsible for this incomplete report. Someone told me once that wee lassie had always loved her mom's stories about cutting up bodies. There's even a rumor that she used to listen to the funeral march as a lullaby. What a f***ed up family. Well then, perhaps her mother might have told her about the autopsy from the case 10 years ago. I'd say there's a fighting chance there, at least. After all, that was a life-changing case for all of us. We really need to speak with Miss Gory herself about this, I think. Well, thank you very much. I'm no happy about any part of this. It took years for Londoners to finally forget the whole professor business. Can you not give up on this, laddie? Stop asking pointless questions. I'm sorry, I don't like dredging up these painful memories for everyone. Can you not just stay away now? Leave me alone and didn't come back, eh? Sorry, I have more questions! How'd you come to kidnap about that, laddie? There's no many folk even here in the prison who'd have heard of those papers. Ah, well, I can't tell if Mr. Vigil told me. I'm afraid our sources must remain confidential, sir. We've been led to believe the papers are actually a last will and testament. Is that right? The professor's, or rather, Genshin Asugi's. Aye, that's right. You're well informed, Jimmy. Oh, is that the end of the silent treatment? But then after the convict's execution, it mysteriously vanished from its cell, didn't it? Heavens, no! You're off the half-cook there. I think you didn't quite get your facts straight. It was there in the cell, exactly where it should have been. Oh, not what we heard elsewhere. Let me just have a wee look around in here. I'm sure I can find it. Aye, yeah. See? The last will and testament of Genshin Asugi, written with a calligraphy brush. Of course, can't read a word of those Japanese squiggles. But I mind it says he leaves all his worldly possessions to his son back in his homeland. Yes, that's correct. That's the gist of it. So these are the Asugi papers? Aye, of course they are. Papers written by Asugi. No doubt about it. There's no mystery here, laddie. There's your lot. After all this shamish slice and execution, we sent the man's possessions back to the clients in Japan, and that was the end of it. I think we ought to make a record of this, Mr. Naruhodo, just in case. Asugi papers have been entered into the court record. I do not believe these are real. These have to be fake. The last will and testament of Genshin Asugi that Mr. Vigil claims disappeared after the convict's execution. Apparently, Mr. Asugi described it as the only weapon I have left. One thing before you go your way, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, yes? Those papers are now to do with Gregson's death. I'd prefer it if you didn't make no mention of them outside this office. Or rather, I wouldn't just prefer it. Consider it an order from the highest levels of government. I understand. Well, unfortunately, I have the distinct impression that, we're gonna have to present it as evidence. Okay, so now that we have gotten all of that, now we shall finally go see our boy Kazuma and probably have a one-on-one conversation with the man. So, this is the office of Prosecutor Asugi now, is it? Oh, Kazuma-sama is doing so well for himself. This is just Van Zeke's office. Even though he's always forced to kneel on the floor, Japanese style, in that dark corner. It's his habit to sit seiza style whenever he's working. Okay. Kazuma. I thought it wouldn't be long before you paid me a visit, Ryunosuke. I was right about what I said, wasn't I? Sorry? That you have all the makings of a great defense lawyer. Well, I always believed that you'd fulfill your dream of advocating in the British courts. I just never imagined for 1 second that it would be as a prosecutor. I did not mean to hit that button. Seeing you stand in a foreign courtroom, so gallantly realizing your dream, Kazuma-sama, I'm truly happy for you. And I'm truly thankful to you, Judicial Assistant Mikotoba. Ryunosuke, I always thought it would be fun for you and I to shake up the British legal system a little together. This isn't quite how I envisaged it, but I suppose it's just another twist of fate. I've learned a lot of things during my time in London. About how Susato-san's father was himself a visiting student here once, along with Judge Jigoku. And about what happened with your father. Then you'll have no difficulty understanding why I had no choice. Why I had to find a way to get to Britain as a visiting student myself. I want to hear from you, Kazuma. As you wish, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Alright. Now time for a biggin. It's getting on for a year now, since what happened on the SS Buria. We were heading across the oceans from Japan to Great Britain, when a bizarre series of coincidences led to those tragic events. I thought I'd lost my best friend forever. I must have been unconscious for a long time. When I awoke, I was lying on a bed. It was a narrow little room. There was a posse of flowers by the pillow. It took me a little while to realize that I was in the cabin of a ship. I slipped out of the room and headed up onto the deck. Were you already suffering from amnesia at that point? Yes. I didn't know what had happened or where I was. There was just this voice in my head. You have something you have to do. Something no one else can know about. Go to Great Britain. Your task awaits you there. It was a calling I couldn't ignore. It compelled me relentlessly. Out on deck, I saw that I was on a huge steamship and that we were docked in a large port. It must have been Hong Kong. Yes, it must have been. Presumably just before they were due to carry your body off the ship. I had no idea of the situation, but I did have the feeling that this was in some way my last chance. So I concealed myself among the disembarking passengers and went ashore. Then I disappeared into the crowded streets of that foreign port city, so I could plan my onward journey to Great Britain. And how the hell did you get here? Just under a year ago, with all of my past memories lost to me, I was left behind in Hong Kong. Everything was foreign to me. The sights, the sounds, the smells, my head reeled. I was truly at a loss. I realized now that I'd escaped as a dead man, with nothing but the clothes on my back. No money, of course. Oh, how terrifying for you. Luckily, though, I had 2 feathers in my cap. One being your knowledge of English, I suppose. That's right. And on the back of that, I was able to pick up some work as a deckhand on a cargo ship. Eventually, after calling countless ports, I finally arrived at Dover. That must have been some 3 months ago now. Your formidable tenacity of purpose showing itself again. I mean, the man had lost his memory and had literally nothing to his name. But he still managed to make his way to London on the opposite side of the world. Of course, I had no idea why I'd moved heaven and earth to get here at that point. So, how did you end up becoming Lord Van Zeke's apprentice then? That can only be called an extraordinary stroke of luck, really. You see, I was stopped at the border because I had no papers. They took me straight to Scotland Yard. And by sheer coincidence, Lord Strongheart was there to attend a meeting. That's when the second feather in my cap came into play. Would that have been your knowledge of the law? Yes, exactly. Lord Strongheart was curious about an Easterner with intimate knowledge of British law. He took me back with him to the Supreme Court and assigned me to the prosecutor's office. And then, 9 days ago, you finally got your memory back after the trial involving Drebber. Yes, I did. Ever since I first met you at Yume, you talked about your dream. Mark my words, Ryunosuke. I'll be chosen as a visiting student and make my way to Great Britain someday. Did you know the entire time about what happened to your father here? 16 years ago. When my father left on that exciting trip to Great Britain, I was just a boy. We took a photograph together the day before his departure. It's my last memory of him. But what I remember most about my father is his unswerving sense of justice. 6 years after he left, a gentleman called at our family home. He told me that Genshin, my father, had been taken ill in England and passed away. It was Professor Mikotoba, your father, Susato-san. Oh my! Ever since then, the professor was very good to me. He even helped to fund my university education at Yume. I'll be forever in his debt. But nevertheless, I just couldn't bring myself to believe what he told me. Oh! Then one day, a letter arrived at our house from Britain. There was no indication of the sender, so I opened it assuming it was from an old acquaintance of my father. What I read in that letter changed my entire life. What did it say? It said that my father had been a mass murderer, and the writer cursed the Asagi name. Oh no! As a result of that letter, I found out what had been hidden from me all those years. Presumably, the letter was sent from a relative of one of the victims. If whoever it was had been a member of the judiciary, he could have been present at the closed trial. The letter revealed that my father had been sentenced to death, executed for being a killer. I'm so sorry you had to find out that way. I imagine the British government did its very best to silence whoever sent that letter. But someone who knew the truth and couldn't bear the resentment was always going to be a problem. But still, it could have been written by anyone. Why would you believe such a thing? There was a newspaper cutting included with the letter. It was the first I'd ever heard of the professor and his terrible killing spree. Well, what did my father have to say about the letter? I couldn't bring myself to show it to him. What? Why not? Because he deliberately concealed the truth from me by telling me that my father was taken by a fatal illness. That couldn't have been easy for him, and he'd done it out of consideration for my feelings. So instead, I showed the letter to Judge Jigoku. Ah, to the other visiting student. He faltered for the briefest of moments, but then he just laughed the letter off. But in that moment, I saw it on his face. He was undeniably shocked, shaken momentarily before recovering his pose. A year later, my bereaved mother succumbed to the strain of grief, and she too passed away. That's when I made up my mind that one day, without fail, I would cross the seas to Britain and seek the truth for myself. The truth about my father, Genshin Asugi. And I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way. Oh, Kazuma-sama. What we learned today in court turned things completely on their head. It was an impressive piece of lawyering, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Lord Van Zieks isn't the Reaper, you know. I almost don't want to believe it myself, but it turns out that Inspector Gregson himself, the victim, was... It's clear that the Inspector was behind the Reaper's activity all along. What? You mean you knew? The real question is, who's been giving orders to the Inspector? Yes, Barrett Van Zieks is the real Reaper. And I know that 10 years ago, it was him who decided my father must be a mass murderer and sent him to his grave. No, he was merely seeing that justice was done as the law dictates. He's not to blame. Ultimately, it's people who condemn people. The law is just a tool that they use to do it. And when a man condemns another, he must take responsibility for his actions. Of course he must. But I know for certain that my father would never have taken another man's life. Kazuma. On the contrary, my father's life was taken. By the Reaper. There's one more thing we can try here. This came up in the trial, didn't it? As something a little dubious, I mean. The fact that no time of death was recorded on Inspector Gregson's autopsy report. Yes, there were some unexpected turns in the courtroom earlier. The suggestion you came up with certainly took everyone by surprise. The idea that the victim died the previous day at some other location is quite something. Well, considering when the pocket watch had stopped and the scorch marks on the candle, it's certainly a distinct possibility. The evidence and the scene both point to it. To be honest, it bothered me too. So I paid a visit to the autopsy room earlier. The coroner responsible wasn't there, but I got a name. It's Dr. Gori. If it wouldn't trouble you, Kazuma-sama, we'd very much like to speak with the coroner too. Of course. The last thing I want is for anything to be brushed under the carpet. Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory is behind Lowgate Cemetery. Of course it is. Lowgate Cemetery... By Barclay Prison, you mean? Ah, you know it, do you? The prison where my father was incarcerated and robbed of his life. Kazuma-sama. Well, thank you. We'll pay a visit to the laboratory later today. Ryunosuke, I want to thank you. What for? For this. You safeguarded the soul of the Asugi clan. Well, it is a famous sword that's been in your family for generations. My only slight regret is that I've never got the chance to draw it before I returned it to you. Karuma is said to have been forged by a master swordsmith during the Sengoku Warring States period. I come from a long lineage of warriors, many of whom were expert swordsmen. Well then, you're a chip off the old block, I'd say. This blade, Kazuma, is the symbol of the Asagi clan's honor and might. Apparently, one of my father's apprentices even took the blade's name for a surname. Really? Kazuma. It does sound formidable, that's for sure. 16 years ago, when my father was a visiting student here in London, he had this sword forever at his side. Which is why it means so much to me that I have it by my side again now too. And that is all thanks to you. It was an honor. Now, I have preparations to make for tomorrow. Perhaps I said a little too much. Kazuma, you've changed. No, Ryunosuke, I haven't changed at all. It's you who's changed. I can completely understand your resentment of Lord Van Zeek's given what happened. But the fact is, those events in this case are, well, unrelated? Is that what you want to say? How can you be so sure? What do you mean? Never mind. The man is the Reaper, and it's for that reason that the inspector was killed. I'm going to prove as much in court tomorrow, by whatever means necessary. I can't let you do that, Kazuma. I know you'll do what you have to as a lawyer. But I'm sure I don't need to tell you that I won't be taking any prisoners in the courtroom. I would expect nothing less. Until tomorrow then, in the Old Bailey. Alright, I believe that concludes our business here. And now that we've talked to Kazuma thoroughly, we can now go to the forensics laboratory. Yay! Oh, it's a lot more colorful now. That's cute. It's an ironically less off-putting aesthetic. This place really is creepy, isn't it? Well, being a dead room, it's probably full of the spirits of the dissected. Why do you have to say that? But actually, there's a rather pleasing scent of roses in the air. Well, being a dead room, the coroner probably needs a bold scent like that to mask the odor of death. Iris? Do you think we could change the subject? Oh god, I don't like that sound. What was that? Dr. Gory? What? That noise before... I was sharpening my tools. I'd be dead meat if I didn't keep a perfectly clean edge on them. Right. When following the collagen fibers in the dermis, an expertly sharpened scalpel cuts like cheese. Would you like a demonstration? Oh, yes, please. I'd love to see. Then, I think you'll do nicely. Huh? No, I wouldn't do nicely at all. I mean, maybe some other time. Was that a tut? Well, we came here to ask questions, so... Alright, what's up with this autopsy report? Botched autopsy report with bogus time? Dr. Gory, we actually came here to ask you about this. He was very good. Good? Sorry? His skin didn't snag my blade once, and very little mess. His joints dislocated easily, and his muscle tissue was a pleasure to work with. What? We could skip those details! But there is one thing about the report that caught my attention. You don't seem to have recorded a time of death. That's not my fault. You're actually kind of cute. Oh, that made me jump. Then please, tell us what happened. So, why doesn't this autopsy report include the victim's time of death then? It's really the most crucial detail. I was told not to write it. What? By whom? Mail Strongheart, the Lord Chief Justice. He came here. Lord Strongheart came? He said that from the witness statements about the gunshot and the other evidence, it was obvious. The man clearly died at 5 p.m. on 1st November, and the gunshot was heard. But that's not the time of death you wrote on the report. You didn't write anything. Was there some reason you didn't include it? Dr. Gory, if you're hiding something under Lord Strongheart's instructions, then sooner or later you're going to go the same way as your mother. Oh my god. Just no tact at all. Give it here then. Hmm? Why's she scribbling so furiously? There. You've written... What? What's she written? Tell us! Indeterminate. But... Details of the autopsy report have been updated in the court record. What do you mean by indeterminate? What do you mean by that? What was the time of death? Why is the time of death indeterminate? When the specimen was brought in, it was still fresh. So the time of death could easily have coincided with when the gunshot was heard. But there was one small discrepancy. What discrepancy? There was some fried fish in the pocket of the specimen's overcoat. And that fish had started to rot. What? If the victim liked fried fish, he presumably liked to eat it before it went off. Well, yes. What are you really trying to say? It's possible that someone tried to manipulate the apparent time of death. Manipulate the... Is that even possible to do? Theoretically, if you were to chill the body in ice, you could delay the onset of putrefaction. Or putrefaction. I don't do autopsy words. And if the overcoat wasn't on the body at the time, then only the fish would have started to rot. With today's science, it's not yet possible to determine if the body was chilled or not. But today's science is advanced enough to let you freeze a corpse, it seems. But surely, to chill a corpse like that would require an enormous electrical refrigerator. And I don't imagine many households in London are equipped with such a device. No, definitely not. But maybe in a factory or some other special places? I don't recall seeing any factories or such like on Fresno Street, though. I wonder if the inspector's body had been chilled somehow. What might the actual time of death have been? I couldn't say for sure. But at the most, it might have been a day earlier. No! In other words, it would corroborate your previous deduction, Mr. Naruhodo. That Inspector Gregson was killed a day before his body was discovered, at a different location. Did you inform Lord Strongheart of this possibility? He simply said that there were no electrical refrigerators of that size in the vicinity. Oh, yes, one other thing. It's something the governor of Barclay Prison told us. He said that your mother, Dr. Scythe, was responsible for confirming the death of the professor after his execution. The professor. Apparently, you always enjoyed listening to your mother's stories about her work, so we were wondering if you might know something about what happened 10 years ago. That's not all Mama did. Sorry? My mama carried out the autopsy of Clint Van Zieks as well. What? Really? The brother of Lord Van Zieks, the professor's final victim. The idea of carrying out an autopsy on a member of the aristocracy was completely unthinkable back then. But the detective in charge of the investigation insisted, and it was miraculously authorized. That detective being Inspector Gregson, of course. Quite an accomplishment for one man. That autopsy provided the vital clue we needed to arrest the killer. And Mama was there for that historic event. What does all this mean? You know, that amazing autopsy happened right here in this very room. The professor and Clint Van Zieks. They both spent their final moments before their burial on that dissection table there. So this lab, Mama's lab, was instrumental in some of the country's most important events. She really is proud of her mother. I wonder if you tell us more about exactly what happened back then, Dr. Gorey. Alright, let's talk about the confirmation of death. The professor's execution was Mama's first big case. She had to be in attendance at Barclay Prison's execution chamber and sign the certificate to confirm the convict's death. Mama is the best coroner in the world, you know? I was so proud of her. But the execution didn't actually take place. No, and worse still, Mama actually helped with the jailbreak. What? I didn't want to know. Oh dear, you found out recently, you mean? I believed in her, in Mama, but now I wonder if I'm starting down the same path as her. You mean because you omitted the time of death on this autopsy report? But that's because Lord Strongheart forbade you from including it. Just like Mama, I'm sure she was coerced by somebody too. Yes, that's my feeling as well. There's no doubt that there were powerful forces at play 10 years ago. The execution couldn't have been staged without a lot of people at the prison knowing about it. Obviously, the prison governor must have been in on it as well. The big man with the little handcuffs, according to what he told us, he was tricked by the chief warder. He says he knew nothing about it. Of course he said that. I'd say the same thing. Just who was behind that jailbreak all those years ago? You mentioned the autopsy of Clint Van Zieks. It was at a time when carrying out autopsies of murder victims was very unusual. It's still not a practice that's observed in our country, even now. It turned out that he was the professor's final victim, and when the autopsy was performed, Mama was present, although only as a secondary assistant. The person leading the procedure was called Dr. John H. Wilson. Huh? That's right, my daddy! And there was one other person present, the primary assistant. He was a visiting student from the Far East. Wait, a visiting student? It must have been my father, Eugene Mikotoba. I had no idea Professor Mikotoba had been involved in something so important. But the outcome of that historic autopsy was the discovery of a vital piece of evidence that led to the capture of the professor. So that's how they came to identify Genshin Asugi as the infamous mass murderer. Do you happen to know anything about that piece of evidence? Can you tell us any more? Would you like to see the records for yourself? What? Would that be alright? What's the point of keeping records if people can't look at them? They're filed under V at the back of those cupboards, with the other records from the last decade. Thank you! Let's see, Van Zeeks. That's strange. What, Mr. Nahodo? They aren't here. There's nothing under Van Zeeks. There must be! Perhaps somebody took them away? No one's allowed to take documents related to the professor case out of this room. But you're right. They're gone! Well, when was the last time somebody looked at them? Do you remember? It was... Oh, yes, I remember now. It was 2 years ago. Please don't make that face. A consulting detective came one day, saying that he'd like to see the records. No. You don't mean... Herlock Sholmes was his name. Whoa, what? How involved is this? Deep down, I knew this was coming. Do you think he stole the records? Oh no, surely not. Iris, that can't be right, can it? Iris? Wait a second. Runo. I hope you don't mind, but... What is it, Iris? I just remembered something very important I have to do. I'm going to have to leave you now. Oh, this is very sudden, Iris. Well, we'll come with you then. Oh no, there's no need. You and Runo can take your time here. Bye for now then. Good luck. Wait a minute, little girl. Me? I remember now. You've been here before, haven't you? Have you, Iris? Yes, 2 years ago, when that detective came. You were with him, weren't you? You were a living specimen then, too. That's the way it usually works, yes. Was I? I really don't remember. Anyway, sorry, but I must dash. Wait, Iris. I'll brew up a pot for you when you get home. What's the matter with her? She's behaving really strangely all of a sudden. I think I know why, but I'll save that for later. Well, in that case, we won't keep you any longer either. It's been quite a while since I've had any visitors. This is really fun. But next time you come, I'd prefer it if you were ready for dissection. I can't make any promises, sorry. It's a bit strange that the records of Clint Van Zeek's autopsy have disappeared. But I think we've asked all we came to ask now. Alright, well, I guess while we're just trying to work things out, let's go back to Fresno Street and see if there's any new information we can glean from the crime scene. Now that we kind of have a better understanding of things. The police are still busily investigating in here then. But Gina's nowhere to be seen. Where is she? Yes, it has been blissfully quiet, hasn't it? Perhaps she's out investigating on her own, practicing what her boss taught her. Well, I expect she'll be back before too long. Shall we wait? Actually, there's something different about this room since the last time we were here, isn't there? We could always use the time to investigate more thoroughly. Yeah, there's this biggin box here. Let's talk to the biggin box. This little trunk wasn't here before, was it? Oh, it appears to be made of metal. It must be very heavy. I wonder to whom it belongs. There are some initials on the outside. Look, TG. Let's ask one of the policemen if they know how it came to be here. Oi! What do you think you're doing? That's my trunk, that is. Hands off. Gina! Where were you hiding? I don't know. You leave something unattended for a few seconds and every Tom, Dick, and Harry's got his gritty eyes on it. Just a wild guess, Gina, but... What? Spit it out, Otto! Is it fair to say that you've only owned that trunk since this morning's trial? What? What are you trying to say? Come on, this trunk goes with me everywhere. Always has. Where have you been the last year? Trying not to incur your wrath, mainly. Alright, well... Guess we'll go ahead and talk about your boss. You should hear him talking about the yard now. This should be a shadow themselves. They're saying that it was the boss who killed all them bludgers. Ah, you mean the whole Reaper thing? Yeah. Apparently, the boss was investigating stuff that no one else in the yard knew nothing about. Stuff to do with all them criminals what got off scot-free. Yes, the ones prosecuted by Lord Van Zeeks who used bribery and corruption to evade conviction. Well, then obviously, there was that bloomin' Ripper giving the orders, wasn't it? But why would people be suspecting Inspector Gregson to be involved in the killings? There was a notebook in his office. Oh no, this doesn't sound so good. It had details about all the crimes that have been pegged as the Reaper's work. What? No. Did you see it, Gina? Did you see that notebook? They wouldn't flaming let me, because I'm just an apprentice, apparently. But it was me who found it, and he was my boss. That's right. I was pretty miffed about it, so... I sneaked a peek at what's said anyway. Oh! That's our Gina. Ooh, what'd you find in the secret notebook? So, you managed to see what was written in Gregson's secret notebook anyway, did you? The way I see it, it's my right to read what he wrote. And what he had written... What had he written, Gina? Dates, times, places, names, and oh, long list of them. All details about the bludger supposed to have been done in by the Reaper. But there could have be an explanation for that. Perhaps it was a record of Inspector's investigations into the Reaper's activities. Exactly. That's what I said. That's the first thing you think, right? As it happens, it was full of names I recognized anyway. Well, the Reaper's targets were almost exclusively known leaders of London's criminal underworld. Well, yeah, but there was one name right at the end that was a bit odd. At the end of the list, you mean? I'm pretty sure the date against it was 31st October. Oh, the day before the inspector was found dead. So, what was the odd name? It wasn't like a name I'd ever seen before. It was something like, Nah, it's no good. I can't remember it. I don't think it was an English name, put it that way. Oh dear. What a pity. There was something else too. I don't know if it matters. But but the same name kept coming up over and over. Shin, it was. Don't suppose it means anything, but... Did you say Shin? Eh? What does it mean, something? Lord Van Zeeks knew the name too. He mentioned her as well. The woman who actually did the deeds. And now, we find out her name appeared in Gregson's secret notebook. We haven't seen you for a little while, have we, Gina? Oh, of course not. I've been busy, ain't I? Investigating in that. The lads at the yard are trying to trace the boss's movements the day before it happened. The day before? That would be undercover investigation into the Red-Headed League then. Only the boss didn't go, did he? He found some cove what he was pretending to be him, didn't you, Otto? Yes, it was Mr. Vigil who actually went to the park on Line Street that day, posing as Gregson. Well, anyway, you ain't the only one turning stuff up. I got my own ways of getting results. Oh, it's a dog again. When me and my partner get together, there's nothing we can't track down. Oh, little Toby. He's such a faithful friend. So, have you tracked anything down then? What do you think, eh? Of course we have. Can't tell you though. Police business, innit? Anyway, the point is, if your lord ever need any help, you know who to turn to, right? Me and the hellhound here. I love that she calls it a hellhound. That's adorable. Right. Because he looks oh so hellish honest. Yes, let's talk about the hellhound. The cutest hellhound ever. Gina, about your hellhound there? Chief Inspector Toby, you mean? He's a pride of the force, he is. In Japanese, police dog means something quite different, and not altogether nice in those involved in crime. But here in Britain, it's a wonderful compliment, it seems, for a canine at least. It should be, after all, in the Great Exhibition case the other day, it was Toby here who managed to locate Doc Drebber's workshop. Maybe it's time for another demonstration of what this super dog can do, eh? Do we have something in the Chief Inspector could catch a scent of? I wonder. Let's do Gregson's pocket watch.
Take that!
Well, Chief Inspector Toby, if you wouldn't mind having a sniff of this. He might be a little too keen, don't you think? The Chief Inspector made short work of Gina there. Huh, look what he's gone to. Oh my, that trunk clearly still has a very strong scent. Of Inspector Gregson. In other words, it must have belonged to him. Oh, alright, a fair cop, I suppose. And you nearly got away with it, too. You always talk so proudly of Chief Inspector Toby's nose and what it can achieve. Did it not cross your mind that he might identify something that was right next to us? Yeah, that was a bit of a bloomer, wasn't it? That's enough now then, Gina. Eh? I think it's time you told us the truth about that trunk. It wasn't like that. It just went. What are you talking about? I know it's going through the head of yours, but that ain't what happened. Alright then, what did happen? Well, like I said before, we were trying to trace the boss's movements. So I let Toby have a whiff of the boss's overcoat. And as soon as I done that, he went off like a shot. Straight to that sandwich. To a sandwich? Not a bag of chips? Mr. Naruto, I believe Gina means the witness. Oh, I forgot about that sandwich. Yeah, he had hid it between the wooden bullets of the boss's trunk. You mean when they heard the sound like a gunshot and all piled in here? Exactly. He nabbed it from the scene. Goodness. Me and the chief inspector gave that sandwich a good grilling. And you know what he said? I thought it might fetch a good price, and the chap wouldn't be needing it anymore, so... But that's all I did, nothing more. Would you adamant even check of it, eh? Seeing the dead boss's stuff to flog. So Miss Venus wasn't the only one to meddle with the scene of the crime then. How could they? So anyway, that's how it happened. And that's a pretty decent trunk, so I figured I might as well make use of it. Is there something wrong with that, eh? Well, maybe you and Mr. Simmons should try to find the answer to that question together. I think perhaps that trunk should be turned over to the police, don't you? What are you on about? I am the police! I mean, she's not wrong. Gina, if you wouldn't mind, could we maybe examine it? Yeah, alright then. Do what you want with it. Thank you. We shall make a detailed record of our examination of the evidence. Gregson's trunk has been entered into the court record. Inspector Gregson's metal traveling trunk that was removed from the scene, but subsequently recovered by Gina. What's the matter with Toby? Why is he acting so aggressively towards me all of a sudden? Mr. Naruto, be careful! It must be the trunk! Oh my god! Oh my god! Sweet Christ! Okay, that actually scared me. Talia, what are you doing? You gotta lick his face off! Mr. Naruto! Mr. Naruto! Gina, quickly! Hail a carriage!